Tennessee, you would think, should have a strong sophomore class. When you take over a program and you're in year 4, I understand if your first class isn't exactly what you wanted. I even understand if your second class isn't exactly what you wanted, but your third class should be pretty close to that. And this would be Josh Heupel's third class. So who ranks number 5 on the top 5 sophomores that will have an impact this fall?
Number 5. And if it were my choice, he wouldn't have an impact because y'all know how I feel about the position. But Jackson Ross is number 5, the punter. He may be the best punter in college football this year. He was really showing it down the stretch.
All right. I don't have a problem if you're talking about the top 5 seniors and your punter's one of them. Like I think Britton Colquitt was back in the day. Former tried to call him a weapon. Or like a weapon behind the wheel. But he sorry. But
Dustin was a weapon.
I thought both of them were weapons, but I didn't think that if you're talking about seniors, you got a problem. If you're talking about sophomores and your punter's an impact player, I got no problem with that. Who's number 4?
Yeah, and I want to send a shout out to Josh Turbyville, who is also a redshirt sophomore kicker, but I think this year Jackson Ross is more proven to this point. And also just want to give him a shout out. Remember, Jackson Ross did help single-handedly beat Texas A&M with one of the best punts of the year that game. So totally
agree.
Yeah.
And Turbyville, we'll see what happens with Turbyville, but he has to make sure and kick it straight. He kicked a couple out of bounds. I was told that was nerves, and I was told he'll be fine. Who's number 4?
All right, number 4 is Jermon McCoy, the Oregon State transfer at defensive back. He was a freshman All-American. This is a big reason Josh Heupel is bragging about how deep the team is. I think he's much more excited about the secondary, and I think Jermon McCoy is a big reason for that. I think Jermon McCoy immediately steps in and starts at one of the quarterback spots.
Pretty strong, because the other one's going to be Ricky Gibson, based off what I'm thinking.
So what's your thoughts? Hey now, that's crazy. Hey now.
I like it. I like where you're going with that. I think the secondary is very much a question mark, so any prediction other than the information I've gotten on Ricky Gibson is going to be really good is just a prediction. I'll tell you when I know something, when I think something. I think they're going to be better than last year, but I certainly don't know it with a complete overhaul. Who's number 3, Caleb?
You just said the name. Ricky Gibson the third. Ricky Gibson the third. Hey now. I
might have him number 1.
Oh no, you won't. When I show you who's in the top 2, you won't. But he is going to start at the other cornerback spot, and he's another true sophomore. Yeah, I think Jermon McCoy and Ricky Gibson are going to lock him down. Ricky Gibson emerged strong last year. I think this is why Tennessee will be better at cornerback this year. That's a very good young duo, isn't it? Ricky Gibson and Jermon McCoy. You're talking about a freshman All-American and a guy who emerged on the stretch of last year that the coaches now love.
If Ricky Gibson is as good as he says he is, and McCoy can make the transition, yes. You're going to hear me say if a lot until I see these guys move around a little bit in practice. But no, I think that sounds like a fantastic duo, better than any duo that Tennessee's had under Josh Heupel, and I would include the duo of Alontae Taylor and whoever the other guy was.
Yes, because it was just Alontae Taylor, and you saw that the next year. Right. Now, Bryce Thompson and Alontae Taylor worked out really well, but Bryce Thompson, had a blow up with his girlfriend one year. She saw some fake eyelashes in his desk. That was a really funny story. Okay, so anyways, it got him suspended for 3 games. All right, number 2, and this is why I can't put those 2 ahead of him. Lance Hurd. I mean, homeboy's like starting in at left tackle like right now, and they expect him to be a superstar, right?
Yes. I mean, if you step in at left tackle, one of the 3 most important positions in football, and you're expected to be a starter, and he is, then that's a big deal. By the way, Jimmy Himes joins us on Wednesdays. He had an engagement that he had to get to. It's called his grandson Orion, which you may see on his Twitter feed. I encourage you to follow him. He joins us regularly on Wednesdays, brought to you by Varner Ford. He'll be back next week. We'll get to number 1 on the top sophomores in just about 15 seconds.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Number one sophomore, not second-year player, because I will go ahead and tell you that's a guy named Nico. Who got shortchanged on the EA Sports game. By the way, James Pierce is a cheat code, but Nico is not as good as he should be. All right, Caleb, who's number one? Who's the top sophomore on this team?
The top sophomore on the team is the guy who is the defensive version of Nico Iamaleava. And before I get to the name, because I'm just setting it up.
Keenan Pili. No, he's like a sophomore in grad school.
And I know, yes, and exactly. No.
So, number one on the def. Okay, who is it?
So where I'm going with this is, let me be very clear, is that this guy had the same hype on the other side as the same recruiting class as Iamaleava last year. But everybody knew he was going to be a backup for a year and have to wait his chance to step in.
Does anybody feel like Caleb is teasing us forward?
Say wham.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Now, again, he's the guy that's expected to step in and be a star now, so he hasn't already been a star.
I'm your huckleberry.
Goes by the name of Arian Carter.
You got me.
Hey now.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah, it's Aaron Beasley is to Arian Carter what Joe Milton was to Nico Iamaleava.
I can't argue with that.
Like they both waited in the wings.
Yeah, we didn't know he was banged up last year, or we predicted based off things we had heard that he is going to have a monster second half of the season when Keenan Pili went down, even though he's not a great fit at the mic, but he'll be a great fit at outside linebacker. And when he's healthy, he will be a superstar. Now, I'm not going to say that he's James Pierce, who's going to go number one overall potentially in the NFL draft, but I will say this. He's in the ballpark ability-wise of that. In the ballpark. I'm not saying he's as talented, nowhere close. Hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate that. And it helps us get to more viewers. And coming up on the program, Troy Aikman was almost a Vol. I don't understand that. And I hadn't heard about that my entire life. But getting back to this sophomore class, how important is the entire class, Caleb, for Tennessee to reach its goals? It's getting to that point where you have to rely on your recruiting, both in high school and in the transfer portal. Josh Heupel's offense probably won him some games he shouldn't have won early, but now it's got to be a little bit figured out. You better be talent-wise a lot closer to the elite in the nation. And if they're not, there's nothing that can overcome that.
Yes, and there are plenty of people that I left off this list. And this is the first class that, I'm like, I could have done a top 10. Dave, I just want to name a few that almost made it. I mentioned Josh Turbeville, but Jeremiah Tellender's on this list, or is a sophomore. He could be good. Caleb Herring is a sophomore. He could be good. David Hobbs is an edge rusher who could be really, really, really good. You could tell me if any of these players should step in and name in place of the people I already named. Y'all say Cameron Seldon. He's a sophomore. I don't think he's that good. And the same Khalifa Keith is a sophomore, though. He will be an impact player. And so this is the class where you start to see guys that can be impact players. Also, redshirt sophomores, guys like Jason Jenkins, a hybrid edge rusher that probably will be in the rotation this year in some form or fashion. There are guys providing depth on the offensive line: Brian Grant, Messiah Reddick, Larry Johnson III. There are receivers that they love: Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, Chris Brazel, all sophomores. Dave, I just named a bunch of people that could all be contributors to Tennessee this year.
This should be the big class. This should be the class that absolutely explodes onto the scene, right?
Yes, exactly. It should.
And we're talking about sophomores. Many of those are true sophomores. This is all those second-year players, including Nico. This should be – he's a redshirt freshman, but this should be their year to take a major step. You've been in the system a year. You know how things go. You should – there's no question this should be the impact class for the University of Tennessee.
And let me correct the record.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm getting called out for believing in Arian Carter, who's from Middle Tennessee. First of all, I don't attack Middle Tennessee kids. I attack the way Nashville's covered because I think Nashville prospects get overrated. Arian Carter's from Smyrna, Middle Tennessee, but not Nashville. But more importantly than that, just because I think kids from an area are overrated recruiting wise does not mean I think kids from those areas are bust. There's a
Right.
difference.
And you don't think all of them are overrated.
I don't think all of them are overrated. What I mean is, if a kid is a 4-star caliber recruit, if he's playing in Nashville high schools, he might actually get an extra star to be a 5-star because so many recruiting services are based out of there.
What was Arian rated coming out of?
4-star, unanimous 4-star
4-star.
across the board.
Okay.
And I don't think where he comes from is going to get overrated because he's in Rutherford County.
Well, it's interesting to me that you would think the rural areas are better than Nashville. I don't know.
No,
why
I think the rural areas are less likely to get overrated. And I've seen this. Look at Murfreesboro talent. Murfreesboro kids overachieve massively at the next level.
Yep. Remember too that Arian has been a part of the program since January 2023. I mean, he took part in Orange Bowl practices. So, and we had a comment on the message board I do want to address. Said cornerback is the toughest position on the field to determine. It's just kind of a crapshoot. There's a lot of truth to that. I think we would all agree that quarterback is the most difficult position to predict, right? I mean, how many busts have we seen? How many Johnny Manziels have we seen come out of nowhere? And I think that's the most difficult position. I think cornerback is second. Here's the reason I think that those two are different from the rest. There's more pressure. You're on an island. And no matter what kind of defense you run, you're going to be one-on-one with guys, Caleb. I would have those two as the most pressure-packed positions.
Oh, I totally agree. Quarterback and cornerback. I think offensive line is actually, it's not hard to miss. I think offensive line, though, and this is going to be a weird one, is it's a position it's not that you miss on offensive linemen. It's much more dependent on how good the coaching is, though. Is that fair to say? Like, I think if you have good offensive line coaches, you can load up on 3-star offensive linemen and turn them into NFL players.
Still something about like a guy like Cozy Coleman walking.
Yes, you can't replace a guy like Cozy Coleman.
I remember seeing that guy and thinking that's different.